it's KJM from Kingston Expressions, and today's No Makeup Sunday is on what to expect around the holidays, the second edition. So the Christmas one was really funny. I played a lot of music and joked about what questions your family could ask you around the Christmas table. Today though, there's something about New Year's that is very reflective, especially a new year that is starting a new decade. Something about it that you start to think about who you are, who you've been, who you want to be. So I kind of know what I'm going to talk about today, but not really. So just work with me. One of the main things that happened to me in this last decade was, it was kind of like my decade of insecurities. I think when you're in your, because let's see, I would have started the last decade at 18. From like 18 to 28, I think I thought I was like superwoman, and I had an idea of how my life would be. And actually from 18 to 29, because I had a 10-year plan and it took me 11 years to achieve it, having to do with educational and career goals and traveling and all the other stuff. And when I got to 29, I just kind of stopped planning because I was so rigid with it. As a matter of fact, I was talking to my college roommate about it, that I was probably more responsible in the decade before, maybe when I was like 18, than I've become in this last decade. And mainly because from 18 to 29, I was on this rigid plan. Like, I dated a little bit, but marriage and children or even a serious relationship was not in that plan. So it was not a thing. Like, I liked people, I cared about people. I loved one time from the 18 to 28 in that decade. And I liked people, cared about people, but never having deep relationships wasn't really on my thing. As a matter of fact, when I tell people this, they get surprised, but it was never part of my life's plan ever. I just kind of picture myself as that rich auntie that flies in with gifts and takes my nieces and nephews on like these really expensive trips. That's how I viewed my life. So then this decade stepped in and it just handed me my ass. So I call this decade like the decade of my insecurities. Like, I learned so much about myself. I got knocked to the ground so much in this last decade in ways I never foresaw. And it happens because when you're young and ignorant, but as you're maturing and you're starting to see things around you, you're having an understanding that how you think your life is going to be is generally not how it's going to end up. There's going to be some things that are like, I reached certain aspirations that I set for myself, but it didn't feel the way how it should. So on today's No Makeup Sunday, just going to talk a little bit about what I learned about myself in this last decade, what I've learned about people. Told you in this last year, I picked up yoga and just started getting into meditation. And it's a wonderful thing. And I know I'm sounding like some sort of woo-woo hippie person, but through meditation, especially through podcasts and listening to people talk about certain things and gurus like Deepak and Eckhart, and listening to them talk about all these different things about mindfulness and being more present in your life. Just in 2019, in this last year of this decade, I feel like I have learned so much about myself and so much more about people. And at times a light bulb will go off and I will wish that I had learned these lessons earlier in the decade or even in the decade before, but they always say you learn things when you're supposed to. That's when those tools are needed. So one of the things I want to tackle that I struggled with in this last decade was expecting people to love me a certain way. You kind of set yourself up for failure when you're expecting people, and this could be like even like a parent. You're expecting people to come through for you in a certain way that registers to you. So, newsflash, everyone loves differently. Okay? Everybody loves differently. And yes, you can, teach people to love you the way how you want to be loved. But generally, people are going to love in the way that they're going to speak a language that makes sense to them. they're going to have to learn your love language. And this is in friendships, relationships, family ships, everything. So they're going to have to learn your love language, but theirs is always going to come natural to them. So there's always going to be this battle that they're loving you in a way that sometimes you feel like it's just not enough. And I know I felt this in like, even in like a family way. And one of the things, I think I was listening to a podcast with Eckhart Tolle, and he was talking about his horrible relationship with his father before, through his childhood, and then, moments leading up to, I think, before his father passed. I'm hoping I remember this correctly. And he was saying that he had a moment of kind of like enlightenment, that he realized that based on his father's childhood experiences, the things he experienced as an adult, based on all the things his father had been through, based on the fact that his father had never really learned the things that he learned, had never become enlightened, had never become more present in his own life. He could only love Eckhart but so much. And that gave a light bulb to me, because I have a disconnect, with my mom sometimes. And I'm being real with y'all. And it's been my whole entire life. I feel this disconnect. And it's not that I don't think she doesn't love me. That's not it. I just felt like it's not the way I want to be loved. You know what I mean? And I never took into consideration that I came out of the womb. Some kids come out of the womb like already knowing who they are. I came out of the womb so strong and so powerful. For those of you that have very strong and powerful, especially little girls who you know are going to be leaders in this world, let them continue to be strong-headed. Let them continue to tell you what they want. I think for my mom, I was probably like a handful. She grew up in a very conservative family. Whereas a woman, you didn't speak, you didn't have an opinion, unless you were my grandma. That's I think about the only woman that could have an opinion. So she kind of grew up in a little mini cult. And while my upbringing wasn't great, I didn't grow up in a cult. My daddy wasn't having that. And, it's because of him being around that I had a certain type of voice. But I also feel like each child comes out of the womb with their own direction. They're just their own direction. And I was the firstborn, so I just kind of pushed through. And as I'm learning, as the disconnect has been going on for decades, and sometimes I have to take a break from dealing with her, I'm realizing that my mom she's doing the best she can. She's literally doing the best she can. Based on her experiences in life and everything she's been through, she's doing the best she can. And they always say when you know better, you do better. I don't think she's ever had a moment where she's reflected on being enlightened and being more present. I don't think she's had a moment where she's thought about beating generational curses the way how I do. I'm always talking about, conquering generational curses and not passing down to my nieces and nephews some of the things that were passed down to me. I don't think she's that in tune with herself. I think she's gone from one abusive situation to the next, and all she's going to be able to do is be in survival mode. That doesn't mean I okay everything she does. It doesn't mean I'm making excuses for the things that she does. I think I'm acknowledging, with all the meditation that I've been doing this year, I'm acknowledging that she loves in a different way that makes sense to her. And it doesn't really make sense to me, but it doesn't mean that she doesn't love me. And it does mean that I'll have to set boundaries. It doesn't mean that you just leave the door wide open in situations where you feel you're not loved or respected the way how you should be. But especially in the parent-child relationship, you also have to take into consideration that, a lot of their childhoods were really jacked up. You know what I mean? A lot of them just don't know better. A lot of them didn't have, while my mom is well educated, I don't know if she is from the school of always wanting to learn. And I mean outside of her professional field. So I'm always reading, listening to podcasts. I haven't had to be in school in over 10 years now. Yet I'm always still wanting to learn. I'm always, listening to Super Soul Conversations. I'm watching Ayanla on TV. I'm watching Black Love Doc. I'm always trying to get some free therapy. I'm always trying to grow. I don't know if she has that kind of intuition to know that she needs to grow in certain areas. So that was one of the things I learned. People are going to love you from their level of experiences. They're going to love you from their love languages. Sometimes they're going to love you from your pain. That's just what they're going to do. And for any of the parents out there, it's something for you to take in consideration when you are dealing with your own children. You know what I mean? That if there are generational curses in your family, and sometimes people are aware of it, sometimes people are not, that you're going to try to break that. And there'll be days you fall down, but you got to get back up and just understand that it's something that you need to do. So I am conscious. I am stepping into that light of understanding that my mom is just doing the best she can. And so that's the number one thing I learned, is that people are going to learn love in their own way based on their own experiences. And childhood has a lot to do with how people love. Surprisingly, it has a lot to do with it. Ayanna's right about that. She calls it I think she calls it the childhood pathology or something to that effect. She's right about it. If you're dealing with an issue in a way that's just not great, it's probably stemming from your childhood somewhere. The next thing I had to learn is it is true. Hurt people. And I've learned that in this decade. So I'll give you an example. The other day I was talking to a girlfriend of mine, and she told me that one of her male friends said something to her. It was like a personal attack. Basically said she hadn't achieved anything in life, and her male friend's much older and has grown children and all this other stuff. So my friend is telling me this whole story, and the first thing that came to mind is I said to her, your friend is not in a good place. If your friend is going to turn in the middle of the conversation and tell you that you haven't achieved anything in your life, like, who is he? The lesson there is, it's so easy when you're dealing with other people's stuff to say that when someone on the outside says something nasty, it wasn't about my friend. So I have to keep in mind that when people do something that hurts my feelings, when there's a personal attack, whether they intended to or not, that it has very little to do with me and everything to do where they are in their lives. For example, in this last decade, I've had people tell me some things I don't think I would ever fix my mouth to say to them. I've had people say in my dating life, he's young, he's just gonna use you up and throw you down. That's what they do at that age. Let me tell you something. No matter how hurt I've been in my personal life, I would never in my life fix my mouth to say something that negative to someone. I would never in my life say to someone that, what type of advice is that? You know what I'm saying? And when people would tell me, oh, he's young, he's going to get a younger girl and blah, blah, blah. Well, newsflash, some of these OGs, like, my uncles and them is also throwing the older, their spouses to the side and getting that hot young thing too. People are people. They're going to do what they want to do. And let's be honest, society is still very obsessed with youth. But my whole point being is some of the things that some of these women fix their mouth to say to me, whether they knew me well or not, was outrageous to me. I would never say to someone, unless there's some sort of abuse involved, you're not going to hear me say, oh, he just using you. He just doing that. Who am I? I'm not God. So when my friend was telling me about her problem and her friend was attacking her and saying she hadn't achieved anything in life, I immediately said, your friend is in a bad place. When people come at me with shit, it doesn't occur to me in that moment that they're in a hurt people, and they're in a bad place when they're giving that type of advice out. You know what I mean? Like, just don't do it. And some of these people I'm still cool with. Some of these people were passerbys. Some of these people were never meant to be long-term friends that would say this messed up shit. And so you have to realize that when someone comes out of left pocket and they're ripping your life apart out of nowhere, they are not in a good place. That brings me to my next thing. Not everybody can be a good friend. I learned that in this last decade. Let me tell you something. Some people are not even good friends to themselves. How are they going to be a good friend to you? Some people can't even treat themselves with the respect and dignity that they should want and they should think they deserve. So you always going to have that friend that pops up on social network acting like y'all are BFFs or whatever. But at the end of the day, when the chips are down, you're not really hearing from that person. Or it could be the type of person that you only hear from them when things are bad because they like to listen to the bad stuff going on in your life. And they get juice off of that. You know what I'm saying? So if you had to drop a couple friendships in this last decade, that's okay. Because some people are, if you look at those people, they're probably not even good to themselves. How they going to be good to you? So don't even trip when certain friendships fall apart, because like I said, I had a girlfriend that I had known for about 19 years when I dropped her. And I would say out of those years, maybe 15 of them, she was a ride or die friend. Last 4 years, she's, calling me up and talking about, you don't want to do better for yourself. Why can't you do better? Mind you, she's not rich. Her and her husband are not rich or anything like that. And I never count their coins, but she's over here counting my coins. And I think the issue is she's mad at my independence. Mad at that I don't have a need to just, run after some man and be like, marry me. And I'm not trying to be funny, but she was throwing stones in my glass house. So I'm like, oh, from her glass house, so I'm gonna just put them back that way. And, I had to really reflect on it. In the last couple years, my friend has been in a very bad place, but she gonna have to dig herself out of that place. She can't keep taking jabs at me and my life and how she views it. You know what I mean? And she would say things to me like, we're so proud of you that you got your apartment. Well, it's my 7th apartment. And I've been knowing her since 99. We struggled together. We would give each other money. We live like sisters. Sometimes that shit happens. She's now got to stand on her own 2 feet, because for the last almost 5 years, I've been her emotional punching bag when she's clearly not happy with herself and her life. So that's the third thing I learned. Not everybody can be a friend. Not everybody's meant to be a good friend. Not everyone will consistently grow and continue to be a good friend. I'm going to tell you right now, you always need good friends. I don't care if it's 1 or 2. You don't need 25,000, 1 or 2. But even if you have a spouse at home, they can only take on so much. You both are going to have to rejuvenate with each other and away from each other on your own. And also have your own inner circle that you can just sometimes vent to. Now that circle could be teeny, teeny, tiny, but friendships are important. Really good friends are important. Ride or die friends are important. And I'm gonna tell you right now, that's one of the things I always say. I've said every decade, and I hope it stays the same, that I am tremendously blessed in friendship. My friends, it could be the smallest little thing that they do for me. My friends will have me in tears with how much they consider me, with how much they consider my feelings, with how much they allow me to be part of their families, with how much they think of me, even when I'm thinking that I'm in this all by myself. You know what I'm saying? So remember that not everybody could be a friend. And then look at how those people treat themselves. They probably don't treat themselves well, so don't be mad when they're not there for you. So that's the third thing I learned. Like I said at the beginning of this video, this last decade was my insecure decade. And I think a big part of it, and I'm figured out of that in the last year, is, in my other dating relationships, I never had to ask for anything. I never had to ask for attention. I never had to ask for love. It's going to sound crazy, but I think I was just given a lot of those things. Not really thinking about how I was receiving it. But in this last decade, I grew increasingly insecure because I was so focused on what I'm getting versus what I'm giving. So if you are a spiritual person or religious person, and you've read 1 Corinthians chapter 13, which is the one on love, and I read that every morning, it has nothing to say about keeping tally of what the other person does for you. It is about what you are giving. And I'm not saying give to your detriment, but it's really about God's love for us, which is like unconditional. And through God's love for us, we learn how to love other people. And it's really about real forgiveness. It's about not counting who did what and whatever. It's about trying to get over the hard times. It's about trying to still get yourself right and being a better person to be in that relationship. You know what I mean? So keeping tally of who gives what and all that other stuff, when it comes romantically, it's been one of my downfalls in this last decade. And it's made me highly, highly insecure because I feel like these are the things I deserve. And when I'm in that mode, it's very negative. When I'm out of that mode, I realize that God's already blessed me with a lot of those things in a multitude of ways that I'm just not paying attention to. Like friendship, or like the love my daddy has for me. I'm very loved. And so keeping tally on how I feel I'm being loved or whatever, it's just not a good look. It's just not a good look. It's really about what I'm giving in the situation. And it's really about making myself whole, where I'm not coming across needy and draining that other person. And one of the things I'm learning through meditation is you can't change the other person. And this is in any situation, right? Family, friends, romantically, whatever. But what you can do is change the reaction to some of the things that they do. So sometimes I feel like I'm in a cycle with people. I'm in a cycle of how I'm dealing with stuff. And I'm so focused on what the other person is over there doing. I'm like, we're still in this cycle. We're still doing this crap. What I'm not thinking about is, Kingston, you keep reacting the same way to the same shit. You can only control yourself. That is something I've just learned in this last year that I wish I had known like 20 years ago. You can only control yourself. You cannot control other people. So if you're in a situation right now where you feel stuck, but you love and you care for that person, just remember your reaction, or how you perceive, your perception of things, how you take things in, makes a difference. And just how you changing your reaction to that situation can trigger that person working on themselves. I'm not saying it's guaranteed. All I'm saying is, if you're stuck in a situation, like a circular situation, you're going round and round and having the same argument with the same person, the only person that you can change is yourself. So I'm working on that. And that's not easy, because sometimes when people press your buttons, and this happens a lot with me with close family, they know exactly where to press my buttons. And so I react. I react how I naturally would react, like old Kingston, and get into the mode and, start cussing folks out, because I love a good cuss out. But I'm working on that. So that's the next thing I learned, is you can only work on yourself. So all the yoga and the meditation and all this other stuff, it's for me. It's for me, because I've gotten to a level in my life right now where I'm like, something's got to change. I can't change the other person. I can't change my mother. I can't change my lover. I can't change nobody. But I have to work on myself. And that's the thing, I think, that sometimes accountability is missing in a lot of situations, where it's so easy to point the finger at the other person and not realize, like, you really need to start working on yourself. And if you're working on yourself and that relationship is still, well, then you'll have to make some choices, or you'll have to set some boundaries. But really, in the new decade, I'm going to try to focus more on just getting myself right, getting my mind right, not letting people test me and me rise up to them. Sometimes people like my friend, the situation I was just telling you, how her friend was telling her she had not achieved anything in her entire life. She didn't react negatively to him and cussed him out like most of us would. What she did was completely, remove herself from that phone conversation, hang it up, and kept it moving. And then she did tell me that she called him back a couple days later just to check on him, because she's realizing that he's not, even though he hurt her feelings, she's realizing that he's not in a good place. And I had to give her props for that, because some of us, me included, honey, would have handed that person they asked, told them about their P's, Q's, and W's, okay? When I was done with him, he wouldn't open up his mouth no more. Fix it to say to anyone. But sometimes you can't do the nasty to nasty. That person is in a bad place. You just got to leave them in a bad place. I think another lesson I learned in this last decade is, don't ask nobody to love you. Don't ask nobody to love you. It's a good sign of insecurity, and it's a good sign that things are not going to turn out the way how you want. If you have to ask somebody to love you. And never in my life had I had to do that. And I felt like in this last decade I've been doing that. And I used to be so hard on myself and be so disappointed in myself. Like, you're a strong woman. You're a strong, beautiful black woman. You shouldn't even be doing that. But the issue is really with me. The issue is, I don't need to be asking anybody to do that, because I love me. You understand what I'm saying? I love me. And I'm not sure if what I'm receiving is his form of love or not. Or I don't really know. But don't ask nobody to love you, because at the end of the day, you have to put all that energy into yourself. And then I think the universe will bless you with that feeling, or bless you with what it is that you're looking for. So I never had to do it with Julio. And I got spoiled by Julio, let me tell you, because even though his personality is unbecoming and he's a real narcissistic and selfish person, I'm going to tell you what some of his downfalls is. And he can say what he wants about me. I'm short-tempered, I'm ignorant, whatever. I didn't have to ask for his love. Like when we met when I was 15 and he was 16, he freely gave that thing to me. He was the first one to say I love you. I think it took me like a year and a half later. And it was after I dated broke up with him, dated one of our mutual friends. It was a whole car crash situation. Remember, I was only 15, right? And I had never fallen in love before, and I had never planned on being in love, and I didn't like how it felt. To me, it still feels like sitting in shit. But now as I get older, it's like sitting in shit and sitting in your sins at the same time. It's not a good feeling. And I think it's because I don't like to be vulnerable. I have a thing about being vulnerable. But Julio freely gave me the I love yous. He freely told me like he wanted me to be his wife. He freely told me he wanted me to be the mother of his kids. So I was so used to guys just throwing that stuff at me and me saying, nah, I'm good. Like, I'm just doing me right now. I'm focused on my career. I'm doing me. That when it wasn't happening, I was like, but everybody thinks I'm fabulous. Everybody else thinks I'm fabulous. Everybody else loves me. And even though the men that have loved me or said they loved me, I still didn't feel like they loved me the way how I deserve to be loved. I don't know if I'll bump into someone that'll love me the way how I feel like I deserve to be loved. But the whole thing is Kingston just needs to make sure Kingston loves herself that much. Because you really can't pour into another person unless you give yourself all of that love first. So that's what I'm going to work on. But I'm not asking nobody to love me in 2020. Okay? I'm just not going to do it. It will either happen or it will not happen. And I believe my future husband will probably watch these videos and see the road I went through to get to him. And hopefully, he'll be able to show me his road that it took to get to me. And we'll talk about all those things and how we're going to beat generational curses and stuff. And even me talking about a future husband, that's all like for real in this last year. And it's not because of some biological clock. I told you I don't have one. And if I did, it's under a Mack truck on I-95 being rolled over. It's literally watching people lose people they love around me, whether I know them personally or not. For example, when we lost Nipsey, I cried. I hadn't cried that hard since we lost Pac and Big. And I can tell you where I was when I found out each of them died. I was outside a movie theater in Bergenfield, New Jersey when I found out Pac died. I was in my mama's house in my childhood room when I found out Biggie died. And I was in my apartment living room when I found out Nipsey died. And I wept. And I kept asking and I kept praying for our sister, Lauren. And I kept saying, how is she getting out of bed? How is she getting about? Lord, how is she doing it? And I had never been so thankful that she got to experience that fullness of love that often you don't see that much anymore. That's why I like the Black love documentaries, because you get to see that Black love. That she got to experience Nipsey, and that the fact that they have a son together. And I've never been so happy that somebody had a baby in their life. I said, because those children, her two children, are probably the only reason why she's able to get herself up out of bed. That and continuing his legacy. And so when I see things like that, it's making me think more and more that still your greatest legacy is always going to be your family. Your greatest legacy is always going to be what you leave behind. So, if you do bump into me in this next decade and I have a husband and I have some children, it was never because of no biological clock. I always said it's like an act of God to make those things happen. And sometimes an act of God is watching other people around you mourn and lose things, and you starting to realize, because that's all I would be doing is just living for my children at that moment. And I think seeing little Nipsey on her son's face should be, something to kind of pull her from some of those dark places. And I still, Lauren, hope that you are surrounded by really good family and friends. Those of us that don't even know y'all personally, still praying for y'all. Still mourning with you guys. I mean, 2019 was really hard. And I still pray for future love for you, honey, because you're still young, you got a lot to give, and there's a lot more life to live. It may not be the great love that you have already experienced, but I still pray that you don't have to walk that journey of honoring his memory alone. So stuff like that has made me think more in this last year that the legacy is really the family. I don't know if I'll have one Only the good Lord knows. But if you ever see me with one, it ain't going to be because of no biological clock or all y'all folks that keep asking me when I'm going to have a baby. It's going to be because that's what the good Lord intended. And I will hopefully be in a place then where I'm ready to carry on the legacy of our family. Those are some of the things I'm learning. That's what I've learned in the last decade. I've been insecure. I've made some bad decisions. I'm a human being and I'm growing. Like I said, this last decade done handed me my ass. And today's December 29th. So after that, we have 2 more days in this decade. Ready for it to be behind me. And I'm setting my expectations pretty low going into 2020. Literally, if I can go to a Halsey concert, if I can dance on some bar stool to Miley Cyrus's Mother's Daughter, I'm infatuated with that song. Okay, so if y'all see me out in Vegas on top of some bar stool dancing to that song, just turn the other way because that's my moment. So I'm setting it really low. I'm going to continue practicing yoga. I am going to continue doing these videos. Shout out again to my family friend Mary that got me started vlogging. I only started vlogging in the second half of the year. So I hope to be consistent and I hope to write more in 2020. Thank you so much for keeping up with Kingston Expressions. I do want to give one shout out before I go to my good friends, the Jiggets family, Mo, JL, my little niece, and Troy, bro-in-law. The Jiggets family, you guys are my Christmas present. The things that you guys have done for me. And I'm not talking about when people do things for you like monetarily. Like the things that they've done symbolically for me, the way how that family has lifted me up. I literally cried on Christmas Day. I love y'all to no end. And to all my friends and family out there that have been supporting me, I love you guys. I wish you guys a blessed 2020 and a good start of the new decade. I hope that it is prosperous. I hope that we can all step into it more present. The goal is, I'm trying to wave at all of y'all signing on. The goal is literally to be more present in our lives. Sometimes I wish I had some of last year's problems this year. Be more present, be more mindful, be more caring of each other. Focus on giving love more than receiving. Understanding when other people fall short, that they're doing the best that they can and they may be reacting from a hurt place. Understanding that we ourselves are not perfect and we still have a lot of work to do on ourselves. Understanding that we're still growing. Understanding that forgiveness is forever a process, starting with forgiving ourselves. Understanding that there's so much more to this life. And for every day that we get to live it, we just need to be thankful and grateful. That's where I'm at going into the 2020. Big shout out to the Virgin Islands. Last year I was there going into, for NYE, going into 2019, the US and the British Virgin Islands. Shout out to the island of St. Thomas and St. John. I miss you guys and I'm really hoping that maybe next year I can join you guys again because I'm just going to be working through the holidays this year. But it's okay. The good Lord done blessed me. All right, one love. Thank you guys so much for keeping up with Kingston Expression. If you're just tuning in now, try watching this from the very beginning. If you have any questions for me going into the 2020, any videos or something you want me to write about or to answer on one of my vlogs, I will definitely try and do that. Be kind to yourselves. Be good to people around you. Remember 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Even if you're not a religious or spiritual person, remember that being kind to others is like a ripple effect. You put that kindness out and it will ripple on out into the pond to other people. All right, that's me. I'm out. And yes, I did dress up for you guys a little bit. I have like one of my Vegas, I think like circa 2016 maybe. Circa 2016 or circa 2018. No, circa 2017 I think outfits on. But I put it on with some biker shorts. I wanted to give y'all something a little extra. All right, I'm out. Once again, this was No Makeup Sunday. It was what to expect around the holidays. The second edition. I'm going to post this on all my social networks when I get the chance. And you guys be kind to yourselves. Be good to yourselves. And just remember, in this last decade, if it wasn't what you wanted it to be, you have another one to look forward to that you're stepping into, and you can put all that energy into that. If people failed you, don't worry about them. They're probably out there failing themselves. Pray for them and move on from it. If you feel like you're not being loved the way how you should be, it's all good. Pour that love into yourself and see what the ripple effect will do. Everybody makes mistakes. We all are hurt or broken in some sort of ways, and we all have the ability to heal ourselves. All right, one love, Kingston Expressions. Thank you so much, and I'm out.